Mondays with Mike. I bet this one will be pretty brief. Biden, there's an investigation. Congress, with their oodles of time, investigating things like the auto pen, and whether Biden was a doddering old fool. Here's the thing, if there comes a specific, he had this disease and it was concealed, I'd be like, that's not great. But I haven't heard what the disease is.
Look, he didn't run for office again. He's retired now. I don't care. I understand for the purpose of, I don't know, understanding history or something, or understanding events that happened as they did, that it's good to know what the actual situation was. But I don't see what the point. The point is really, I guess they're trying to exact a political price for Democrats by saying, oh, you supported Biden even when he was having these medical problems, and so your, I don't know, competence is called into question, or your...
Yeah, I think they're trying to write history in a certain way. I think ultimately it goes to that.
But maybe it could come to an honesty issue, that for anybody who's still seeking political office or power, who rallied around Biden and covered it up, if there was a cover up, that maybe if they're going to do it for Biden, what will they do in the future for someone else if that occurs? If this is the way that problems are dealt with, what else wasn't adequately addressed? That I could understand.
Yeah, maybe they're thinking that there's some kind of high probability, because it does work out this way, that they run against Kamala Harris. One shrugs, but in terms of just the raw probability, if you were to pick any given name, her name is up there.
Yeah, it could be, I could see Gavin Newsom, Kamala, unless she runs for office in California, so she ran for governor, for instance. Or, yeah. I don't know. It's not going to Bernie. I don't think Bernie's really old. I don't think he's going to...
Bernie is quite old, very old.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to run. But yeah, no, we'll see. It's going to play out. Anyway, sorry for interrupting. Yeah, let's talk about...
talk about the actual topic. Dr. Kevin O'Connor, Biden's doctor, was advertised as pleading the fifth. The story, from what I saw, was that, so he was asked, the actual question was, Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health? This was asked by presumably a member of Congress, perhaps James Comer of Kentucky, the House Oversight Committee chairman. What, did you conceal Biden's health? It was, were you told to lie about Biden's health? That was it. And to that, he replied, and it wasn't a good soundbite, that he was, on the advice of counsel, he was not going to answer such questions, both based on doctor-patient confidentiality, which is a real thing, and based on the Fifth Amendment concerning Biden's physical and mental health in 2024 and perhaps other years. The doctor's lawyer, whose name I did not get, emphasized the doctor-patient confidentiality part. But I'm just thinking, wouldn't it just be sufficient to say doctor-patient confidentiality? I know people in medical and medical adjacent fields, and they're pretty on it with HIPAA. I know that also that guilt is not to be inferred from the use of Fifth Amendment rights, and indeed I'm not looking to get the doctor to testify against himself, but I just wonder, can we be led to believe that the doctor-patient confidentiality part of it would be an insufficient excuse for whatever? And I guess it comes down to the question, if somebody was asked the question, who was the first president of the United States? Is it a valid answer to say, I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights? Can you just say that, whatever? Or does it have to be, is it not valid to say that in every case? That, to me, is what the question comes down to right now.
As far as I can tell, they're just covering their bases. It's a way to try and reduce the chance of a subpoena, right, of being forced to testify. If you just say, if you assert that you're not going to testify, period. You saw this a lot with the Trump officials in his first term, when they were all called to testify during Biden's administration during the January 6 hearings, and they all just said, nope, not going to do it. And then I think it's that kind of thing, that they're trying to limit even the likelihood of being forced to testify. Where it gets tricky is if you've publicly stated something and then you try to assert a right to not say it, even if you've already publicly said it. But in this circumstance, I don't think that applies because the doctor is right. Biden worked for the country, but he's still a human being. He still has a right to privacy.
Yeah.
And so it's not like they can just pour through every facet of his life of every day that he was president. Like he still has a right to not have his life looked at with a magnifying glass for every single second of his day in his life. Especially now, he's a private citizen, right? He's not president anymore. He can just go live his life, and he should just be left to do that. It's actually really bizarre that they're fixating so much on Biden
Mhm.
now because he's not running, right? Like he's old. He already said he's got prostate cancer. Like he's not running. The guy is not going. It's just Biden's retired. You don't see the Republicans in Congress pouring through Bill Clinton's doctors, asking Bill Clinton's doctors to testify, or Bush's doctors to testify, or Obama's doctors to testify in front of Congress. No, it's just got to be Biden because they just won't let it have the dignity and peace of just not being constantly investigated and his life poured over, even while he's no longer president. It doesn't make sense. I'm half expecting them to go back to whining about Hunter Biden. It's like, he's not in power anymore. He's not running again. Let him be, right? This doesn't accomplish anything. The future is waiting, and don't these people have jobs and constituents that they actually have to help, right? This is what I've been trying to understand. What does this accomplish? What are they doing? If you're always backwards looking, if you're always digging up random stuff in the past, so like the Kennedy stuff and this stuff and some of the other stuff that they're doing, it's like you're being paid to represent people in the now, in the right now and the tomorrow. And I'm not so sure it actually accomplishes anything of value for your constituents to spend all this time and energy and congressional resources on this stuff when there's real pressing issues we face. What are the effects of Trump's tariffs? What are the effects of all these wars going to be on the peace and security? How are we going to deal with the issues of environmental climate change? Look at all those floods that just happened in Texas. Why were the people from the National Weather Service fired when obviously there's a need for the people who know about water to be doing the job where they tell us about the problems of water, right? Like, what's going on? Why were there any shortages of anybody who worked there?
It seems to me that there's a strain of tactics going back to, and I don't necessarily know that this exactly applied in Obama's early presidency, but pretty much every Democratic president, Clinton and on, it's investigation after investigation. And with Monica Lewinsky, occasionally it turns up something. I know that my father was disgusted by the investigation, so it had an effect on him in the opposite direction. But I do wonder whether, Hillary's political future was in some way doomed, I don't know, by this
The Benghazi hearings definitely affected Clinton's chances at winning. Let's put it that way, because it just made it seem like she was always under investigation. But here's the issue. Biden's not running again. I don't know that anybody in Biden's orbit, maybe Kamala Harris, maybe, but I'm not so sure, right, is running again. So what does it accomplish? Anyways, sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna follow that track. So one can make an argument that by dragging somebody's name through the mud, sooner or later, it works. One could make that argument that character assassination, no matter based on what, if it's done long enough, the average person gonna scratch their head is, haven't I seen that person's name in ill repute too many times? Isn't that, if they have 10 scandals surrounding, surely one of them. But it doesn't make the same sense in terms of Biden. I don't really see the goal, as you don't. And he's a man in his 80s. He's got cancer. How about some dignity? How about some elder statesman dignity?
Okay. Let him be. But here's what I will say. It's the politics of distraction, right? So you constantly have the shiny object, okay? The shiny object. Have you ever seen like a red dot for a cat, right? If you
I've seen a red dot, yeah. And then it moves. And then I'm like, wait, it was over there, and now it's over there.
The cat follows the red dot. I must catch the red dot, right? I have to get it. And you just move it around, and the cat just keeps following it. Same deal with politics. So there's always got to be like something being different, like distraction balls being juggled in the air all the time. And the Biden stuff is a well that apparently hasn't run dry for the Republicans, that they just keep going to that political and just keep trying to dredge up whatever they can over and over, because I guess to confront reality anathema, like you can't actually deal with the things that are happening now that need to be addressed. Because that's what I'm trying to understand. What are these people's jobs? Why are they elected? What are they doing? Are they clowns? Is this a circus? Or are they just there to put on a show for the TV and drive fundraising dollars and clicks on social media and have their little social media profiles and their Twitter or whatever? What are they doing? What is the job? Are these serious people?
The outrage machine.
Because on a day-to-day basis, I'm honestly struggling to understand what precisely they are actually doing to help any of their constituents. What does this accomplish? Who do they work for? What are they doing?
Yeah, what are all these people, adults, doing at the zoo on a Tuesday? Don't they have real jobs? No wonder the country's such a mess. Do you know what I'm referencing?
No, but why are they looking at the flamingos?
Yeah. And which is not to say, because a friend of ours once confronted me about Clinton's emails. And this bald gentleman, very dear to you and I, was like, you don't really care. If she had done something with those emails, you wouldn't care, would you?
I cared. Look, I cared. I cared in the sense that, I cared in the sense that it was so irresponsible, right? That it looked bad even if it ultimately wasn't, even if it was allowed, even if it was all completely above board. It just looked bad, right? Like, why do you have to have a top government person like hiding official government business from other government people, right? Don't they all need to know the same stuff so they can all do the same job and work together to do the things, right? Like, you're not in your own little separate planet Clinton with your own little Clinton army and Clinton military and Clinton spies. They all work together to accomplish a goal. And that's what I saw there. It was like, why does this have to be the way that it was? Why can't you all just work together and follow the official channels for what you have to do? I don't understand.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good idea for a website. It's a schedule tracker. What did Congressperson such and such do with their day?
Yeah, they already have something like that for Open Secrets and a couple of others where they look at the money. It's what are these people actually doing, and what they're actually doing is going to fundraisers and raising money and going to parties and all sorts of things that isn't doing job for constituents.
Sure. And unfortunately for us and for the country, feeding the outrage machine probably works. If they get engagement on X, if they get engagement on YouTube, I was like, owning the libs, if they get engagement, it will probably help their re-election prospect, but I wish it were not so.
They just need a court jester that all he or she does all day is just tell all these people, do your job. Just do your job. That's it. Do your job. Do your job. Yep. Help your constituents.
Ideally, they would tell them that in rhyme. That would probably be the most effective.
Make it a reality show.
I think a court jester in Congress, because what is Congress, like the least trusted institution or something?
Yeah, they consistently rank way down the list of things people like and trust. Rotten cheese, and I don't remember the exact polling, but it's way down there of what do I like, not this.
Less popular than the government cheese, and they have no one to blame for it but themselves. So that would be good. That's what we want now, a court jester in the halls of power to speak truth to power. It could be a rapper, it can be like a country music, whatever. He could be a comedian, whatever. Maybe it's like SNL with a guest host. I think that would turn things around. Okay, you want to move on to, or you want to say something else, or do you want to move on to Epstein?
I guess time is a finite resource, and all of these hearings that they're doing on stuff that ultimately seems, I don't know, inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, it is time that they're not spending on the really important stuff. Like, Congress does in fact serve a truth-seeking role,
Sure.
unique in our government, in the sense that they can follow a lead all the way to the end of whatever the lead is, because they have subpoena power. So if they really want to find out if there's waste, if there's fraud, if there's corruption, they could do it, right? There's a lot of tools they have at their disposal, but it speaks volumes that for whatever reason, all of their focus is backward looking, and it's only on political stuff. It's not on how do I meaningfully improve the lives of the people who live in this country. What are they doing? That's what I don't understand. And the Democrats are doing a terrible job of calling them out every day on what are you actually doing to make life better for people. All the stuff you're passing just makes it worse. That ultimately, I think that's where there's still room for improvement. That's my last say there.
On Tuesday, July 8th, NBC News reported that Epstein killed himself, and that there was no Epstein client list, and apparently the tape in the hallway of the cell where Epstein was kept, it always jumps from 11:58 and 59 seconds until 12 a.m. It always does that. I'm not sure I buy it.
I don't buy
it.
No, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it.
That there's a minute missing for the last however many years for all tapes.
No. That would not be a good system.
That seems like a really terrible system. And that they wouldn't have backups or multiple cameras looking at the same location. These are some of the most heavily surveilled places on the planet. I just don't buy it. If you look at how a prison's set up, the very design of it is that you're supposed to be able to see things from multiple angles. Not just one angle, multiple angles. Because the whole way that at least the ideal way a prison's set up from what I've read of prisons is that you're able to see it at every corner at all times from almost every direction. Like that it's not just like you're looking at one thing from only one angle. You're looking at it from 5 angles. It completely boggles my mind that for whatever reason they seem to be saying that no standard practice for penal incarceration in the United States just didn't apply at this. If it was a higher security prison, it just doesn't make any sense. So because to miss what happened, they would have had to have a shift change, no video, no cameras, only one angle. There's a whole list of things that all had to have happened all at the same time. It could have, but I'm just skeptical. I was like with all things of this nature, I'm skeptical anytime you just accept the stated narrative, because we know that mistakes get made in almost all investigations, that errors occur, and they don't find out until much later after the fact that something was missing or there was some element that they weren't paying attention to. But yeah, no, this whole situation is just a whole mess anyways, because these are the same people who have changed the narrative completely on this, that were spending countless hours going on and on about this one issue, right? If you look at the first few months of the Trump presidency, they were like, oh, here's the list, here's the files, here's the video, we've got it all. And they brought in all the journalists, the bloggers, and the social media. They're like, look, we've got everything. It's on our desk. We're talking about it. And now all of a sudden, it's, oh, no, nothing to see here.
Just another day at the office.
Just, oh, the birds are chirping. The sun's out. It's nice. It's shining. Oh, look at the sun. It's so pretty, right?
Yeah, you've heard about Epstein. Forget about that. How about that red dot over there?
Look at the dot. If there's anybody involved in this huge criminal case that's out there that could potentially be guilty of anything, any associates or accessories, were there really only 2 people involved in this huge thing? Was it really only Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein? Really? If it was, fine, but really? Because allegedly we're talking about thousands of people. That's a lot of people.
When Tom Yamas just reports, he begins, Jeffrey Epstein was awaiting trial on sex trafficking getting charges when he took his own life in a federal prison back in year. That's the beginning sentence of the report. If you're a truth seeker, if you're a journalist, are you going to begin with, here's what we know, everything untoward, or the most untoward thing that you have heard is false? Is that what a truth seeker would say? I'm not saying he's not a truth seeker, I believe he is. But I think that there's this, like we talked about with the Kennedy assassination, I believe that there's this Officer Bar Brady, nothing to see here, folks, move along, impulse, that for one reason or another, mainstream thinks they need to adopt in order to be reputable. And they want to be reputable, and they should be reputable, but because it would help the country. But that is not the way to be reputable. So let's look at this step by step. Let's look at this step by step. I think that would be a good role for journalism. What do you think?
Oh, journalism has a huge role in truth seeking because they can go follow leads all the way to the end and ask a lot of questions of a lot of people that most investigators may not or won't. The role that journalists play is that sometimes they can go places that others can't, that they can go to talk with cartel leaders in some territory in Mexico, or they can sneak into a war zone and talk to rebel leaders. Like they can find answers to things that usually are very difficult to find an answer to. So there is very much a role of journalists in seeking out like what the real truth is. And also the other issues that journalists at least used to, I don't know so much these days, but there was a time when journalists didn't have a vested interest in the outcome of what knowing information meant, right? So there's a problem in government investigations that if the people in charge of the investigations have any kind of liability or any kind of exposure, right, to the information that might be found, then they have tools at their disposal to just not investigate, right, to quash the investigation. What journalists can do and where they serve a real role is that they don't have that vested interest, right? The truth very much is the objective. And so they'll just keep asking questions and keep lifting up the stones to see what they find until they actually find the answer. That's the real value and benefit of journalism. Good journalism. The problem right now is that there's a real incentive, at least for television journalism, to want to maintain access to the powerful. So the most recent example I can think of was the ABC journalist who was fired or suspended. I don't know if he was fired, but the ABC journalist who called Trump and Vance haters, and all of a sudden, oh, guess you're not a journalist anymore for ABC, right? Where if they express any kind of, if they dip their toes into the water of like even modest disagreement or criticism, that all of a sudden, oops, you can't do interviews anymore, can't have any access to the White House press pool, can't get close to the ways that journalists make money right now. The Associated Press actually is another good example where they were banned from talking to Trump in some of his press conferences because they would refuse to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America, right, where they were presenting it as the Gulf of Mexico in some places. And they said, oh, that the Trump administration refers to it as the Gulf of America, but it's the Gulf of Mexico. Like,
it's like Gulf of America is not a descriptive, it's not a precise term. If you take it as the name of that Gulf, then it is. But if you just think about it from the abstract, why don't they call it like Gulf of Louisiana?
Or Gulf of the Atlantic Ocean. It's in the Atlantic Ocean. It's something that's non-country specific, right? A geographic location. But anyways, the point here is that you want journalists to ask those tough questions because sometimes the lack of an answer is an answer, right? That the refusal to answer is the answer. That there's some that for some reason they were very open and very forthright right up until I don't know a few days ago of we have the files, we're going through the files, we'll release the files like this, blah blah blah, and they were bragging about it, right? They were proud about it. And then all of a sudden, it's, nope, nothing to see here. Here's the rug, and we're just sweeping all the nothing under the rug. It's just, look at this pretty rug. It's a great rug, right? It's such an awesome rug. We bought the rug. It's Orwellian, right? We've never been at war with East Asia. No, we've always been at war with East Asia, right? But anyways, for this one issue, it looks like it's not going away. Like their base wants to talk about this one issue. I don't know why, but they're really fixated on it.
So, want to talk about Alligator Alcatraz and then America Party? All right. Alligator Alcatraz, it is a new detention facility that exists in Florida, in the Florida Everglades. And the idea is, if you try to flee, the gator's going to get you. So Trump said about it, it was meant more as a joke, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And then the guy, an acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, said, individuals that want to come here to enjoy the American dream should think about returning on their own, so they're not, and then it was inaudible, but I think he said, in a detainment setting. Oh, and the Seattle Times at some point, headline, reported that since Alligator Alcatraz has been opened, there have been hospitalizations. Maybe it's some kind of tropical disease or something. And 5-6 months ago, we said to ourselves, will he reopen Alcatraz? Yes, he will. Not only will he reopen Alcatraz, he'll make a new one with gators. And the gators are going to get you if you try to escape. When you have an electorate who chooses somebody who ran a very successful reality television show. In fact, let us say the most successful reality television show. Nobody has ever seen a reality television show like The Apprentice, because it resulted in a presidential candidate 2 terms. And not only that, but a presidential candidate, the first since Grover Cleveland, to come back from oblivion. I did not forget about ratings. The ratings were excellent. They were very good. That was probably the best thing that NBC put on. But not only did they the influence. Let us concede that The Apprentice was the most influential reality television show of all. And The Celebrity Apprentice. Although in the first season, Annie Duke should have won, not Joan Rivers. When you have that, and that's the culture, and then you get things like Alligator Alcatraz, the voters of this country ought to ask ourselves at some point, are these the tactics that a civilized country engages in? Scaring people? The gator's going to get you if you try to escape? This seems to me, okay, it doesn't seem to me like this, but it reminds me of the Bloody Code of England of the 1700s. It's like men are not hanged for stealing horses, but that horses may not be stolen. Extra history. They got a great series about the Bloody Code, about the South Sea Bubble, about Robert Walpole and the beginning of the UK presidency. But I'm left to wonder and shrug and sigh and say to myself that I hope that there is reflection among intellectuals throughout the political spectrum that of what a civilized country ought to do. What do you think about this whole Alligator Alcatraz thing or any of it?
Oh, the cruelty is the point. It doesn't surprise me. I am increasingly puzzled why we're detaining anyone for any extended period of time for these things. If the objective is deportation, then people should be deported back to their country of origin. End of story, right? If they're found eligible for deportation, they get picked up, they get deported back. I don't understand why there's any range to that. Why they get deported to prisons, I don't get. Because they're not actually convicted of a crime and sentenced to a prison sentence. And if they get deported to, or even if they get detained in a, whatever this is, the Alligator Alcatraz, I still, again, because here's the issue. Illegal immigration generally is a civil offense, right? You're found not to be here legally for paperwork reasons. Okay, you're invited to leave. The end, right? That's the whole extent usually of it. For most of my lifetime, for whatever reason, the Trump administration, in the first one and now in this one, is trying to impose extreme amounts of cruelty on this particular issue. Other countries don't do this kind of thing of extreme amounts of imprisonment, detention, etc. They just deport people, right? So a good example right now is Iran actually is deporting a huge number of Afghan refugees out of the country. They're just
Yeah.
making them leave. What they're not doing, as far as I know, is throwing all of them in prison and saying, oh, look, all you people that we're telling to leave, first stop is prison, and then you leave. No, that's what I saw in the news, right? And this is Iran, a country not exactly famous for its kindness and its generosity and how nice it treats prisoners. Okay, people aren't here legally. They're here in an undocumented way. I understand. Then deport them. The end, right? There doesn't have to be extra frills. There doesn't have to be all extra cruelty. You don't have to make a big show of it. That's, as far as I understand it, how the law works. This is why it doesn't surprise me when that court down in LA was like, stop with your crazy ICE raids. They don't seem to be all that legal, where they just put a halt to some of those raids that were going on in like the parks and some of the other stuff where you can't just do a dragnet. You can't just sweep everybody up and then sort out who's not allowed to be here after the fact. Like, I just really struggle, and I have ever since hearing about all those people being sent to CCOT down in El Salvador. It's like, why are you sending people to a maximum security prison? These people aren't even accused of violent crimes. It's a paperwork thing, like overstaying a visa or walking in across a river or something. Like things that at most would be like a fine and invite you to leave the country. And they're sending them to a maximum security prison with 90 people to a cell, and they shave their hair and they like march them with their heads down.
When you consider, in the first place, the case of El Salvador, and it was murder capital of the world, and there were gangs and stuff, and so now they've arrested a lot of people, and they had to arrest a lot of people, I would say, because of the lives going on there, and it wasn't good to have that much crime going on for that long, and there were a lot of murderers. Now, if you consider such murderers, somebody who hops the border is not in the same class of person as such a murderer. You can find somebody, I'm sure somebody who is a murderer has hopped the border. It's not, but the average person who, as the acting ICE director said, an individual that has come to America to enjoy the American dream, that is not the class of person who belongs among such murderers. And although in certain cases deportation would be in order, we ought not conflate such people. They're good people, a lot of them, and they want a good life for themselves and their families.
Okay, this also goes back to Brand America of these people in another lifetime, one where they're more economically successful and they have greater opportunity. These are future tourists or consumers of American products and goods, right? And if you cement an indelible message in their minds of America is a cruel and unforgiving place that disproportionately punishes people simply for wanting to be here to seek economic opportunity and greater safety and security for their families. If the message being sent is not only are you not welcome here, but also it's going to be a cruel stay while you're here until you go back, right? It's not as if these people just vanish into the mists of time, right? They go back to their countries or their communities somewhere else, and they'll just choose to consume and buy anything other than American products, right? Like there will actively be an effort to no longer buy anything or affiliate in any way with America. And that just engenders a kind of ill will that I think the Trump administration just isn't valuing as much as maybe it should in terms of America's reputation in the world. And that, I don't know, it's not as if look, I think a lot actually about the president of, I think it was Colombia, where his big gripe wasn't that they were being sent back. It's that they were being sent back in shackles, right? It was the way that they were being treated in a way that made it gave them less dignity as human beings, right? It doesn't bode well for things like diplomacy and trade and tourism and just general like feeling good about America in the world to make countries dislike us because we're treating their people poorly simply for wanting to be here. That's just my
Yeah.
thought. It's like we should be making every effort to still leave a good impression while they're in our custody so that, sure, they won't come back because we're deporting them, but at least they won't have a sour taste in their mouth about how they were treated and go to every journalist and television station and whoever will listen like, this sucked, everyone
Yeah.
sucks. The one last thing I'll say about Alligator Alcatraz, it's not great that they create these like touristy names for prisons because the whole point of a prison is that you're trying to accomplish a goal, that you're incarcerating someone for a sentence for a crime. And in this case, what makes this so egregious, frankly, is that these people aren't necessarily sentenced with any crime. They're just here, and they're here temporarily, and then they're leaving. The threshold for deportation isn't necessarily that you're sentenced for a crime or even found guilty of charges. It's just enough to prove that you're here undocumented, right? That you don't have like legal permission to be here, and then the government can kick you out. But if you
Mhm.
really carefully look at all the actual laws related to deportation and illegal immigration, there's all these provisions in there that I don't know if it's changed, but for the earliest times, there are all these provisions in there that you have to treat these people, all of them, every individual, politely, in a kind manner. You have to give them all of their property. You can't dispossess them of any of their stuff. You have to give them everything they own back as they leave, right? And there's just a whole list of things for how individuals who are deported from the US are supposed to be treated in terms of dignity and respect, all written in the law, in the statutes. And I just don't see it from the Trump administration that they're treating these individuals with any kind of like dignity or respect, that there's some kind of standard that they're applying to these individuals that's entirely separate from how individuals are supposed to be treated as a baseline standard in the criminal justice system in terms of the rights and protections they're supposed to have, like lawyers and the conditions of their incarceration and just a whole list of things, right, that don't seem to apply to this group of people. And I don't get why. And I've been trying to understand it because I've been reading these decisions, and the judges seem to be pretty straightforward. There are still, even though they're being deported for being illegal immigrants, there's still like a standard of due process and treatment that's supposed to be followed, and for some reason it's not. And I don't know. I think a lot about that whistleblower, the lawyer who got fired when he said that he didn't know why Garcia was deported to El Salvador. Rubini, he's the guy who he went into court and the judge asked, "What's the legal basis for why he got deported?" And he's like, "I don't know. I don't have that reason." And then he got fired because he didn't ardently support the Trump administration's goals. And so then he became a whistleblower, and he just came out recently and said that essentially the mandate from on high was to ignore the courts and to just push through with the agenda anyways, irrespective of what the law is. And I think that's still playing out because he just recently was a whistleblower. The career prosecutor got fired. No, I think about that one a lot because the cracks are in the system, right? You can have an agenda, but you still have to have people, lawyers, and people all along the hierarchy who are actually willing to go along with the agenda. I don't know. I was watching. Have you ever seen the movie Trial at Nuremberg?